Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pivot Point DFS, presented by FanDuel on the Believe Network and part of the Old Man Squad Sports Network. I am Keith Cork, and I am here to break down what happened in Week 6 for DFS for us, and then also to talk to you about my top plays for the upcoming Week 7, which I'm very excited about, guys. I think I have some pretty a really good handle on where everyone's going to go and where we can get different, where our pivot points are. And just so you guys don't know, if you're watching this YouTube video, don't worry, I'm not like depressed or something like that. I'm not shaving because it's part of my Halloween costume, which is I'm gonna be Wolverine again for a second year in a row. So I like to have that wily feel. So eventually you'll see me with some funny facial hair. Maybe I'll do the intro as Wolverine one of these weeks. But yeah. Obviously not a good Week 6 for me. So reason to be depressed there. But we actually weren't that far off, right? I think just maybe one or two plays away from hitting the money line and making it a profitable week. Nowhere close to taking down the big money. So, definitely some work to do there. But top lineups from last week. In Week 6, the Spy, we had Trevor Lawrence, Josh Jacobs, Rico Dowdle, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd McConkey, Hunter Long, Kyren Williams, and the Rams. And I mean, honestly, this isn't too far off. I wasn't on Trevor Lawrence. BTJ, I did have some shares. As you guys saw, if you're not following me on Twitter, please do. Obviously, I do these podcasts and these, broadcasts on Friday. Today or Saturday. It was actually Saturday last week, but Saturday morning. But it's Friday night this week, so things will change between that and Sunday morning. What happened there was Quentin Johnston was ruled out, which made Ladd McConkey a really nice play, really decent play at 5,700. I had him in I think 2, maybe even 3 of my lineups. So, and I don't run out that many lineups, only 4 or 5, 6 lineups a week. So I had him in quite a few of my lineups. But yeah, McConkey was definitely there. The running backs. My big miss this week was fading Dowdle. So, but Josh Jacobs were all over. But yeah, that's the one that took it down. Again, that Seattle game really intrigued me. I had a lot of Sam Darnold again and Jackson Smith-Njigba, who absolutely went off. So, but he or she went with the Jacksonville side there for their stack with their QB. On the screen pass, it was Drake May, Josh Jacobs, Rico Dowdle, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Ted McMillan, Kayshon Boutte, very interesting choice. Don't know how you get there, but he absolutely went off. Now I know how you get there, and I understand. But no, Kayshon Boutte, I was thinking, sorry, someone else. But yeah, it's kind of an odd one. But you are going with Drake May, so maybe that explains it a little bit. That was his stack. Yeah, it's the only New England guy that he played with Drake May. So Tonjes is at the tight end, Kyren Williams, and the Rams defense. So definitely an interesting one there. I don't think I'll ever have gotten to Boutte, how the heck you say that name. I don't think I would have gotten to him. It seemed like the key to unlock the victory this week was Josh Jacobs, Rico Dowdle at the running back position. Josh Jacobs was the guy I was really interested on. I don't think I ended up calling him a lock last week. I really wanted to, and then I backed off last minute, if I remember correctly. We'll get to my plays in a minute here, but absolutely went off predictably in that game against the Bengals. And other than that, really nothing super surprising except for the Boutte and the Tonjes play. The Tonjes play was kind of something on my radar, but yeah. Here's the chalk at running back. Pretty concentrated ownership this week. We had Rico Dowdle with 42% almost of ownership in the Spy. Josh Jacobs, Javonte Williams, which is the guy I was on, absolutely busted out, unfortunately. Ashton Gianti, Rashad White, Christian McCaffrey, and Kyren Williams. Nothing at all exciting or surprising about this. Nothing at all. Exactly what we thought it was going to be. Wide receiver chalk, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Emeka Egbuka, Puka Nacua, Ladd McConkey, Ted McMillan, Chris Olave, Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen, Brian Thomas Jr., and Jalen Waddle. Yet again, nothing at all surprising here. Maybe Keenan Allen, a little bit surprising. But, no Quentin Johnston, so it makes sense if you wanted to pivot off Ladd McConkey. I just had that insight that McConkey was gonna go off in this game, and that's what happened. So should have went there if you're going to go that direction. He was only $100 more than Keenan Allen, so I wouldn't have played Keenan Allen personally, but I can see where people got there. QBs and tight ends, we had Drake May, Justin Herbert, Bryce Young, and Trevor Lawrence. Not super shocking. Bryce Young did have that matchup against the Cowboys. Cowboys are someone that the field's just going to attack every single week, which we'll talk about this week as well. Trevor Lawrence was the pivot off of my guy, which was Sam Darnold. I went with, ended up doing pretty well. And Drake May was obviously going to be, popular after having beaten Josh Allen the week before. So, nothing exciting there. For the tight ends, Jake Ferguson, Tucker Kraft, and Hunter Long. Hunter Long was someone that was just kind of a punt play at 2,500. I did end up with him, as you'll see in some lineups. Didn't expect a whole lot. He didn't do a whole lot, but a lot of people just had him in there. Tucker Kraft was kind of the tight end I was most high on, so I actually expect him to come in a little bit lower ownership than this. So a little bit surprising, but not super duper surprising. Jake Ferguson obviously has been good all season, and with no CeeDee Lamb, it makes sense people went there. The top performers at QB, Drake May was the top one, and he was a top owned. So there you go. A lot of people hit the jackpot there. Jacoby Brissett, interestingly enough, was the second highest scoring QB. Jacoby Brissett. And we got that news, and I was like, I was like, do we play Jacoby Brissett at 4,200 near minimum pricing? It was intriguing. I didn't want to come off of what I had. I felt pretty good about what I had, so I didn't go with it. I wish I would have. And in retrospect, he really didn't need to do a whole lot to hit 3x value. I probably could have used it extra, maybe 1.5K that would have saved me. So, maybe I should have done a swap there, but I just wasn't feeling it. Daniel Jones was next, and then Dak Prescott, and then Sam Darnold, my guy, rounded up the top performers. So I feel pretty good about that Darnold pivot. 7.86% owned. He was about 5% owned last week with him as well, and he still did very well. So wasn't too worried about it. Running backs, obviously Rico Dowdle smashed it, which unfortunate for me, but it happened. I think he falls that back down to earth. Obviously, going to be on timeshare this week. Now with Chuba Hubbard returning, also a tougher opponent. So I'm not going to be Rico Dowdle again. This time, hopefully, it won't burn me. I don't expect him to high ownership again this week, though, as well. Devon Achane had a really good game. Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, Kamani Vidal, and Christian McCaffrey round out the top performers at the running back position. Yeah, Kamani Vidal, man, I wish I had more cojones because, man, I really did think he was going to be the lead back there with Hassan Haskins. I mean, you have Haskins in that team for a reason. He has a role on the team already. They needed a lead back, and to me, it seemed clear it was going to be Kamani Vidal, but people were saying Haskins was going to be doing it. It was just too much uncertainty there for me to go there. He was $5,000, so he was very cheap. But I don't think I fault myself for not playing him, but he did smash. Wide receivers, we have George Pickens, we have Jackson Smith-Njigba, Kayshon Boutte, Ladd McConkey, Jamar Chase, Brian Thomas Jr., and Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne was the guy I confused Boutte for. Kendrick Bourne, Kayshon Boutte. Bourne, I can see now where people get to that. Obviously has a connection with Mac Jones, so he is an interesting fella for sure. But he had a great game last week. At tight end, we had Trey McBride, Tyler Warren, Michael Mayer, and Harold Fannin Jr. and Tyler Higbee, interestingly enough. Yeah, Michael Mayer was a guy that a lot of people ended up on as well. About 8% owned. No Brock Bowers in this one. And there was another tight end, I believe that was now I'm losing my mind here. I believe there was another tight end that was ruled out, so it left only Michael Mayer as an option there. And of course, it is Halloween season, so we all should have known Michael Myers, obviously, is his name, not Michael Mayer. But yeah, it was no, there was nobody else ruled out, but he is the guy that backs up Brock Bowers. Obviously, Brock Bowers didn't play. I mean, I can't. It's hard for me to get excited about that Las Vegas offense. So I can see why I didn't play him, but he was only 3,100. Definitely a better player than Hunter Long, obviously. 600 more in the salary, but it is what it is. Harold Fannin, obviously Njoku got injured in that game, so can't really predict that one happening. And then Higbee, yeah, maybe if he's still low priced, you go to him again, but it wouldn't have been able to call that Puka Nacua injury happening. And then we had Gadsden also was one of the higher scoring tight ends. Jake Ferguson and Tucker Kraft rounded out the higher scoring tight ends. So we did get some chalk in there as well. Some pretty interesting guys. If you recall, I was wondering if there was going to be some opportunity at tight end. And that it did turn out that was the case, right? It was Michael Mayer. I'm not going to count Fannin and Higbee because nobody was on them. I'm not really going to count Gadsden either. Nobody was really on them. But Tyler Warren and Trey McBride really crushed it and were difference makers. So if you had them in your lineups, it was a really big boon to you as well. So there was opportunity there, but I didn't end up getting it correctly. The accuracy report for this week, 10 out of the 20 10 of the 20 top 26 plays had double-digit ownership. So that's 38% of the top play or the top owned plays. As opposed to 33% in week 5, 24% in week 4, 43% in week 3, and 20% in week 2. So it was a chalky week. A lot of the chalk did hit. 3 out of the 4 of the top owned QBs hit value. As opposed to 2 out of 3 last week. 2 out of 7 only of the top owned RBs hit value. So you really had to have those two. You had to have Rico Dowdle and you had to have Josh Jacobs. That's opposed to 6 out of 10 last week. And then 4 out of 10 of the top owned wide receivers hit 3x value. That's compared to 4 out of 13 last week, so a little bit more accurate there. 0 out of 3 of the top owned tight ends hit 3x value, but 2 out of 3 last week. So yeah, the highest priced tight ends weren't top owned because perceived value opened up, but the perceived value didn't hit the 3x in general. 37.5% of the top 24 picks that people rostered hit 3x value. That's compared to 48.3% in week 5, 45.8% in week 4, 50% in week 3, and 29.6% in week 2. So actually, I misspoke earlier. I said it was a chalky week. The chalkiest week actually wasn't super successful. It was more successful than week 2 when we started tracking this. But less successful by far between the last 3 weeks. The last 3 weeks have been pretty similar, right? Around 45 to 50% of the chalk has hit 3x value. But this week it was only 37.5%. So the 38% I said earlier, was for the top scoring plays. 10 out of 26 of them hit or had double-digit ownership. So we had concentrated ownership at running back, and you had to have the right ones. There was no real pivot at running back this week. You had to have Rico Dowdle and Josh Jacobs to take down a tournament, take down a GPP. I did not have Dowdle, so I was automatically I wouldn't even call it a pivot. My play was Javonte Williams. I was all over him, every single roster, and he crapped the bed. That's really the story of the week for me. There's not really much else to analyze there. Was expecting more. I think, at this point, we do give the Panthers running defense a little bit more credit than we have been, right? We don't give running backs against the Panthers an automatic boost the way that we do, the way we thought we were going to do before. I think that's one way that we adjust from this. But yeah, the Rico Dowdle fade definitely killed me. Obviously, I had a bunch of Emeka Egbuka, and he got injured. Puka Nacua was another guy that I wasn't on necessarily, but other people were, and he was injured as well. So, the Egbuka injury on top of having Javonte instead of Dowdle really that ended my week, right? And what can you do? It's the game. You have one lineup, it's a single entry. These things happen. It's football, right? So you can't kick yourself too much. There is variance, and we're just going to hope that it works out more in our favor this week. My chalk calls from last week. Justin Herbert, yep, he was chalk. Drake May, yep, he was chalk, of course, as well. Christian McCaffrey, yep, chalk. Josh Jacobs, chalk. Ashton Genty, chalk. Rashad White, chalk. Kyron Williams, chalk. Rico Dowdle, chalk. Javonte Williams, chalk. So correct entirely in the QBs and RBs with who I thought was going to be rostered a whole bunch. Wide receivers, we had Puka Nacua, yep. Jackson Smith-Njigba, Emeka Egbuka, Tedero McMillan, Stephon Diggs. Michael Pittman, no. Michael Pittman was only 5.6% owned. Disappeared. Didn't do anything, so it didn't really hurt me that I was wrong on that call. But I did expect him to be higher owned than what he was. Chris Olave, yes, he was chalk as well. I thought Trey McBride would be chalk. Part of the reason I didn't play him, if I would have known he would only be 4.56% owned, I might have. I wasn't on Jacoby Brissett. If I somehow could have got to Jacoby Brissett and convinced myself to go there, I might have played Trey McBride. But I also thought Trey McBride was going to be chalk. So Jake Ferguson, yes. Tyler Warren, no. Only 8.1% owned. Borderline chalk. I'm not going to count it, though. I think he was less than chalk. So Tucker Kraft, yes, he was chalk. So I thought Kraft was the pivot at tight end. He was my recommended play. And unfortunately, everyone was on him. So we really got no leverage there. So, bad read on my part. And the tight ends were what I was really hyper focused on as well. So, but definitely disappointing. Definitely disappointing on my part. My top plays, yeah. Javonte Williams, oh my gosh, putrid. 1.3x his value on 8.4 fantasy points. Just awful, awful stuff. Chris Olave did a decent job. He ended up scoring 15.8 points. I think we need to view Olave going forward as really a floor play. Doesn't have that ceiling on this current iteration of the Saints. Maybe things change. Maybe they get a different QB in there, or they shake things up, trade away Kamara and stuff like that, and get someone. I don't know, get someone else. But at the moment, he's definitely just more of a floor play. But his price tag is still pretty attractive. So no problem playing him in there. Jackson Smith-Njigba, yeah, absolutely crushed it. So that was my one good call for the week. Stephon Diggs, gross as well. 5.8 fantasy points, only 1x value on 5.8K salary. Tucker Kraft ended up finding the end zone, which really saved his day. 12.3 fantasy points there. Nothing exciting. The only one that really, really hit was Jackson Smith-Njigba. And this is what a losing week looks like, right? We had a couple of really bad duds. And then we had guys that really didn't explode, right? So nobody exploded except for Jackson Smith-Njigba, and we had two really bad duds. That's the week, okay? Key pivots that I suggested that I ended up playing, Sam Darnold ended up being in about half my lineups and did a great job. Yep, 20 fantasy points and 5.4K salary, 3.7x value. I'll take it all day. Jalen Waddle was a fine play as well, 10.37% owned. It's just so curious to me. He's a wide receiver 1 on the Dolphins without no Tyreek Hill. He did get double-digit ownership here, but definitely not among the elites in terms of ownership. But he didn't do amazingly. 15.82 fantasy points on 6.1K salary, 2.86x value. Juwan Jennings was a guy that looked good on paper that absolutely busted out. 0.4x value. Terrible, terrible day. I think he had one catch, I believe. 1.7 fantasy points. Just awful call there. And then Darren Waller, excuse me. I believe Darren Waller hit the end zone again. Sorry about that, guys. There we go. Yeah, Darren Waller, I believe, hit the end zone again for 9.2 fantasy points on 2.3. He's 2.3x to his value at 4K. So, yeah, not a great week for me. Not much to say other than, the guys I thought were going to do well didn't do well. There's really, aside from, me not identifying the Jacoby Brissett play and not getting to the right tight ends, there wasn't a whole lot that I can really beat myself up over. Probably more this week than previous weeks for me to beat myself up over. It kind of was funny because last week was my best week of the season. So we knew the letdown was incoming. And yeah, it did happen. Probably my worst week of the season so far. Mean cash line for the SPY, it did come down. I thought it was going to come down last week with some teams on bye. Only 2 teams on bye this week, but the score was down 155.82 as opposed to 176.8 the previous week. This is the first week it's come down all season. So it's been trending up, and finally it came down. Screen pass is 156.06, so slightly higher, but yeah, it continued to come down. We did identify the potential opportunity at tight end, but didn't know how to play it. Yeah, just lost opportunity there. Sniffed something out there. I did just by looking at what everyone was doing, but I wasn't even correct about what everyone was going to be doing. That's the problem, right? And that's what we're trying to be good at here. We're trying to be good at guessing what the field's going to do. So it was a failure on my part for sure. I'm trying to beat myself up too much, but maybe you guys like that. I don't know. Maybe it's good content. Pivoted to Herbert McConkey after QJ was ruled out. Just want to let you guys know that. Do follow me on Twitter at DataDrivenOMS. At DataDrivenOMS. I have free betting picks there as well, which I'm doing amazingly on. Currently, I am 25 and 18 plus 7.32 units. So if you do $100 units, it's $732 in your pocket this season thus far from my gambling plays. But yeah, do follow me there because I did make that announcement on Twitter where I said, okay, I'm off of the Fade Herbert train. I only had one lineup where I had Herbert in with McConkey, but I did end up stacking those guys, and I had McConkey in a couple lineups as well. And I think it's time to respect the run defense of Carolina. CMC, yeah, Olave's a floor play, but CMC also at this point can be viewed as a floor play. He's not getting those explosive plays. It's not happening. Is that because he's another year older with his injury history? Is that because the 49ers are dealing with tons of injuries themselves? There's a lot of different factors playing in here, but he's not a guy that I'm viewing as a big boom guy. You know, if I end up with him, I'm not going out of my way to get him anymore. I was kind of doing that, kind of saying, okay, I want to spend up on CMC to see if he can have one of those big games. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And then it's just not happening. It's just that you can't, if you watch the games, it's not even possible for him at this moment because he's just not getting those yards after contact. He's going straight down when he's getting contact. So I'm not going to be going on my way, but he's still a decent floor play. That price has gotten to the point where we're probably fading him at this point. Rico Dowdle is going to fall back down to earth this week. There's no doubt about it. Tougher matchup this week, and we've got Chuba Hubbard in the mix. I don't think that's anything crazy to say, but this is I'm not finally going to be not stabbed in the back by Rico Dowdle 2 weeks in a row. That's kind of happened to me, and this next week, it's not going to happen. So, my performance. How did I do? Yeah, I had Sam Darnold, Christian McCaffrey, Javonte Williams, Jackson Smith-Jigba, Lab McConkey. I had Cooper Kupp, so I did stack the Seattle Jacksonville game here. Well, I didn't say stack. I didn't have a bring back, but I did stack Seattle quite a bit here. Hunter Long was my tight end, Emeka Egbuka, and the Dolphins defense. As you can see, I hit 134, and the pay line was 155, I believe, somewhere around there, right? So, it's about 20 points off, right? And if you think Javonte has the game you think he's going to have, where he scores, about 20 DK points, and then Emeka Egbuka doesn't get hurt, maybe I hit the min cash line, right? And that's the best I could have hoped for, probably. So, all in all, wasn't good. My best screen pass entry also did not win, but it had 140.08 points. So 156 was the cutoff there. So it was a little closer to the money line there. Spencer Rattler at my QB, Javonte Williams, Kyron Williams, Jackson Smith-Jigba, Nia McConkey, Chris Olave, Tucker Kraft, Ashton Jeanty, and the Browns defense, which got me 0 points, which is pretty funny. But yeah, so no good, no bueno. Obviously busted out this week. That's the first time I've lost entirely everything that we put in since week 1. So, pretty happy about that. That hasn't happened, more frequently this season. Still up 200 on the season compared to what I put in. So we still have a little bit of a cushion there. But obviously this was a fall back down to earth type week for me. So definitely want to get a bounce back in this upcoming week. Week 7 NFL. What do we got going on here? So many things that I need to tell you guys about. I'm stalling, of course, because I'm trying to get this thing to cooperate with me. No, I do think we have some really decent edges here. And man, there are some really interesting. Leave. There are some really, really interesting plays coming up here, and some really interesting chalk as well as some interesting pivots, I think. So I think I have a pretty good handle on this. I think there's going to be less uncertainty because we had quite a bit of stuff change on Sunday morning. And so I think less of that's going to happen this week. At least I hope so. But it is getting that time of the season where people are getting banged up. They're getting, rest and things like that. So, you know, it is we have to keep on top of the news. We have to make some late swaps. We have to be able to be prepared and able to do that. I was not prepared to go to Jacoby Brissett. He did not look good last season. I mean, it just, I don't want to beat myself up over it too much, but maybe I should have. In hindsight, it looks good. It looks like, oh man, you should have been able to call that. But at the time, didn't feel like I absolutely had to necessarily swap off of Sam Darnold. So, who do I expect to be chalked this week? First and foremost for the QBs, absolutely Jaden Daniels. This Commanders Cowboys game is going to be stacked to high heck. People are going to be stacking this game left and right. It's going to be insanity. They're going to have so many Commanders in Cowboys. So, as you know, we're not going to go with the field. We are going against the field, hoping that it busts out, hoping that it doesn't work. Of course, I'm not showing my screen. Oh, there it is. But Jaden Daniels is going to be one of the top-owned QBs. Didn't look great last week against my Bears. I will say that much. The rain really kind of played a role there, though. Had some turnovers that were kind of, I guess, I wouldn't call them unlucky. They happened because of different factors, like like him being rusty coming back from injury, like the rain happening. So it just was kind of a recipe for disaster for Jaden Daniels last week. This week, I do expect him to be better. Fumbled the ball twice, and he's not really a guy that fumbles the ball. Through interception, also not a guy that throws a whole lot of interceptions. So I do expect him to be a whole lot better. And it is a good matchup here against the Cowboys. So I have no problem with it. It's not like I'm going on a way to fade Jaden Daniels. I just think that there's other options at QB that I like a little bit better. So I'm probably not going to end up with him. I might end up with him in like one lineup. Okay. So I'm not going to go crazy on him. The other guy that's going to be popular is on the other side of the ball, Dak Prescott. We can expect a lot of ownership there as well, 6,500. I do think it's also a pretty decent matchup for him. The game total in this game, let's see. Let's go over to our partners at FanDuel and see what they have the play for. Actually, since we're talking about FanDuel, I will give you guys a couple of my bets that I have out there. Since they are on FanDuel, I'll give them to you here on the podcast a little bit later on. I got to remember to do that. But anyways, FanDuel has this game currently at a 54.5 game total. Has been trending up. People are expecting big fireworks from this game. So of course that means it's going to end up being 25 to 22. But if you look at the Cowboys games, I mean, none of them have been under 50 points really. We've got this one at 45 as against my Bears, funny enough. This one's at 44 against the Eagles, but still pretty high scoring games, right? 45 and 44. So, there's really not a reason to believe this isn't going to be a high scoring game. 45 plus points for sure. So Prescott makes a whole lot of sense. He is getting CeeDee Lamb back, which is really nice, of course. Gives him another option, a more reliable option than what he was throwing to. And he's got that boom potential. So I've got no problem playing Dak Prescott either. I'm not going out of my way to fade him. I probably would go Jaden Daniels over Dak Prescott simply because of the rushing upside. If Jaden Daniels has a couple of rushing touchdowns, he absolutely crushes Dak Prescott. Prescott, of course, could get a rushing touchdown, but it's less likely. So I'd probably go Jaden Daniels in that scenario over Dak Prescott. The other guy that I would assume to be pretty highly owned is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, who also gets a weapon back in Rashee Rice this week. He's 7K, but he's going up against a terrible, terrible, terrible Las Vegas Raiders defense. So it's a really nice matchup. Has all of his tools, obviously. Has more receiving options. I don't know, man. For me, getting the receiving options back takes away the thing that's kind of buoyed his value all season, which is the rushing attempts, right? He's going to have less. He had 10 rushing attempts last week. He's not going to have 10 rushing attempts again this week with Rashee Rice back, being able to throw to him, being able to throw to Kelsey, being able to throw to a bunch of people, any of his running backs, really. I don't think he's going to have those rush attempts. I don't think he's going to need to have those rush attempts. So, especially against a team like the Raiders, they'll just pick them apart through the air if they have to, or they might just rely on the run game. I'm not on Patrick Mahomes. I'm not going to go to it. If you want to, more power to you. He's been the best QB in fantasy this season so far. I've got him in a couple of my season-long leagues, which I'm obviously happy about. But I don't feel a need to spend up for him there. A guy I'd be looking at instead, which is I think is going to go a little bit more overlooked than people are letting on. The projections I see have him pretty highly owned, but my guy Caleb Williams, Black Nails don't care. He's been looking great this season. Been having a really, really solid season. Didn't look amazing against the Commanders. Had a touchdown called back due to illegal formation, I think it was, to Roma Dunze, which was in the end zone. Had a couple of really nice, passes in the end zone that just didn't come to fruition. So I'm expecting a better game from him than last week, and they are against the Saints. So definitely a good defense to throw against at least. So I do think he's on the radar here. The issue is, who do you pair him with? And for me, it's a little difficult because Roma Dunze is 6.6K. I really don't want to go with DJ Moore after what we've seen with his role in the offense here. I was hoping DJ Moore would be out, because now I'd be all over Luther Burden, who's continued to see his role in the offense grow. He had 4 catches for 51 yards last week. I was hoping to get that going, as a stack. But really, I like the run game, which we'll talk about here in a minute more than I do the pass game. So I'm probably not going to end up on Caleb Williams, but I do think he's a decent option, and he's going to probably go a little bit overlooked here. So definitely should be on your GPP radar. For the running backs, the chalk that we're going to see is, rightfully so, Josh Jacobs. I wanted to be all over Josh Jacobs last week. This week, I'm not super high. I've got some other guys that I've got rated higher than him, but I have no problem ending up on Josh Jacobs at 7,800. His price did come up 500 from last week, but he's getting all the work. And doesn't come off the field. 18 rushing attempts last week, 22, 16, 23, 19, just getting a whole bunch of rushing attempts, involved in the pass game a little bit, getting a couple of catches here and there. So, definitely a solid choice. Don't think I need to go out of my way for it. I'm not salivating to play Josh Jacobs, even in a pretty decent spot here because of the price tag. The other guy that's going to be, I think, chalk this week, which is because of the games total, because everyone's going to be all over this game, is Javonte Williams. I think people are going to be playing Javonte Williams. And tempted to go back there. He is the same price. He's actually 300 more than last week. So I'm tempted to go back there just because he did bust out last week. So I think the ownership will be below what he should be getting based on the spot here. But I'm not going out of my way to get him. But if I do end up on him, I'm more willing to go that route for sure. I think he has a similar ceiling to a Josh Jacobs. And he's a whole 1,100 less than Josh Jacobs. So I do like that play a lot. Breece Hall is another guy that should get really good ownership. The Sharps are all over the Jets this week, and I love it, man. I think the Jets are going to win this game. I think it's going to be a really nice, hard-fought game. Both these teams definitely are wanting to win here, but the Jets really desperately need a win. They really, really desperately need a win. Breece Hall is another guy who is absolutely crushing it in terms of usage. Braylon Allen. They do have Isaiah Davis playing behind him, but Isaiah Davis is really not getting a whole lot of snaps. 2 carries last week, and he had 1 reception on 1 target. So Breece Hall is really getting all the work. It's a nice matchup here. I just said we want to respect the run game of the Panthers, which is why I'm not making him one of my plays I'm locking in automatically. But the thing with Breece Hall is that he can get it done via the air, right? He has 42 yards receiving in week 5, 30 yards receiving, 31 yards receiving, 38 yards receiving. He's got, a couple of duds in there, but but he can get it done in the air. I expect them to target him heavily in the air. He had 0 targets last week, inexplicably. No idea why. It was a close game, 11-13. You figure they could have gotten him a couple of looks in the air, and that just didn't happen for whatever reason. This week, I think it's a different story. And I do think he has that capability to go for, 50, 60 yards in the air, as well as putting up, 50, 60 yards on the ground, which is nice. Those are good, 100, 120 all-purpose yards. And if he finds the end zone a couple of times, 6,300 is still a really, really nice price tag for him. So I do like that play for sure. A guy that I'm all over that's going to be chalk. I think everyone's going to own him in the world. I wish the weather wasn't. So the weather's going to be really bad in this game, right? The Cleveland Browns and the Miami Dolphins. So that's something we always got to keep in our mind. Right now, as I'm talking to you again on Friday, the weather looks like it's going to be pretty crappy. Going to be rainy and pretty strong rains also. So keeping the ball on the ground does make a whole lot of sense. Keyshawn Junkins was the offense up until last week for the Browns. For whatever reason, they went away from him last week. But let's expect him to go back to him this week, give him close to 20 carries again, perhaps even more with the weather, if the weather is that bad actually on the day. He's only 6K, and he's going up against the Dolphins, who just gave up, however many yards, a bajillion yards to Rico Dowdle. They just keep getting gutted on the ground. Let me see, the Miami Dolphins, let's see. They played, I know they played Rico Dowdle a couple weeks ago. Last week, it was Kamani Vidal last week. Kamani Vidal absolutely crushed him last week. Just teams are absolutely just destroying this Miami defense, and Keyshawn Junkins actually looks like the real deal. He actually, and no offense to Rico Dowdle or Kamani Vidal, but they don't have the same pedigree, right? Those aren't guys that are theoretically as explosive backs as a Keyshawn Junkins. And so I think Keyshawn Junkins, no matter what the chalk's going to be, no matter what the ownership's going to be, barring an injury, there's no way he doesn't smash. So those are the kind of guys I want to look for when I look for the guys I want to lock in. So I'll just go ahead and tell you he's a lock right now. But yeah, he's a very strong play. The other guy that's going to have quite a bit of ownership, which I also like, is DeAndre Swift. I think he's going to have lower ownership than the other guys I'm talking about here. But he did have a really nice week last week. People might ride that high a little bit, but I mean, look, Monangai got some carries in that game, and he did not look super great. 3.8 average per carry, five carries for 19 yards. He did have a 25-yard catch. I expect him to still be mixed in a little bit here and there, but he's not taking the position away from DeAndre Swift. Now, Swift is questionable. I'm expecting him to play. There's no reason. It says right here, he's going to play. I don't think this is serious. He's been kind of banged up for a while, but we saw last week that offensive line for the Bears really went up front, and they have the opportunity to do it again here this week against the Saints defense. That isn't great against the run. I mean, they're not bad, but they're not great. So I do expect DeAndre Swift to have yet another strong showing, and 5,700 is a really, really nice price tag. The last guy I want to mention here is a guy that I think also was going to go under owned compared to what he brings to the table. And if you know me and you know how I feel about this guy, you might laugh. But Corey Krosky-Merritt, I think a lot of people are going to be going to Deebo Samuel, maybe Luke McCaffrey. I like Chris Moore. I had Chris Moore in a lineup last week on the Monday slate. And I like Chris Moore, but he's 3K. But they'll be going to that guy. So they're going to be ignoring this run game. And I do think, and if they're going to play Javonte Williams, we saw what happened to me that one week where I played, I think it was Javonte Williams. I didn't want to play Rico Dowdle because he was the comeback running back. So they're not going to play two running backs in one game because that's just generally a losing strategy. It's not a good strategy. And Corey Krosky-Merritt really jumps off the page. I mean, obviously a rough week last week against my Bears. He did fumble the ball, didn't get a whole yards per carry, 3.6 only. But, they did a good job bottling him up, the Bears did, which has been a better defense since the first few weeks the Bears have. But this week, it's obviously the Cowboys, much better defense to play against. And I'm expecting something close. Maybe not the 31 he had in week 5, but something closer to 15, 16 DK points at least from this guy. He's 6.1K. So I think he's a solid play, and I think he's going to be overlooked a little bit. But he's still going to be chalk. I think he's definitely going to come in double-digit ownership. For the wide receivers, I'm not finding it. I'm finding it. CeeDee Lamb is 7,500, coming back from injury. Gonna have to shake off some rust. I don't think it's a bad play, right? It's not like I'm gonna go out of my way to avoid playing CeeDee Lamb. I'm gonna have CeeDee Lamb in probably at least one lineup. In a game script where that's supposed to have a lot of points. I know he's chomping at the bit to get back out there, but guys returning from injury are always kind of difficult for me. We always kind of assume they're going to have a little bit of a slow start. But yeah, I mean, it's a fine play. I have no problem with it. But I'm not going out of my way for it. The other guy I think is going to be chalk that I'm more interested in, though, and this is why I'm not super in on CD, because I think I'm going to get the leverage with the ownership for sure. He's a little bit more expensive, but he's right in the same ballpark. He's only $100 more. It's Justin Jefferson. I was hoping Kenyon Mitchell will be out so that we'd have a better, matchup here against Eagles. So they'll probably get some Kenyon Mitchell, but I'm not super worried about it. Justin Jefferson is just an absolute G. He's an absolute one of the best, if not the best, wide receivers in the NFL. 22.3 DK points in week 5. Obviously, they had a bye week last week, so a lot of people just forget about the Vikings. But we won't. We're not going to forget about them. Still getting heavily targeted, still catching everything in sight. Nothing to hate here at all. I just think for me, it's the leverage off of CeeDee Lamb, who it's not like I have question marks about is he going to produce. I just wonder, is he going to have to ramp up a little bit from coming back from injury, right? No indication that he's going to be limited or anything like that coming back from his injury, but that is always a possibility, right? Where he maybe sits a few more snaps than he would have otherwise. So, I like Justin Jefferson as leverage play. I think he still will be pretty highly owned, though. So here's the big one. This is the big chalk play that we need to talk about. And I keep going back and forth about it. It's Rashee Rice. Okay. Rashee Rice is 5,600. Wasn't technically injured, right? He was suspended for getting in a car crash and leaving the scene. Dirtbag move. Hopefully he learned something from it. Whatever. Let's leave that at the door. Let's just talk about DFS. People are just convinced that this guy is going to jump in and just go crazy. One thing we know about the Chiefs is they spread the ball, right? They are a good team. They make the right play. They don't force the ball to anybody. Rashee Rice did look great last season before he injured himself. And that's the main thing, right? That's the main point. Not just one, two catastrophic injuries to his knee, right? Tore his ACL. Let's see, looking it up right now. Tore his ACL and his LCL. Right, I'm not seeing ACL here, but I'm fairly sure that was the case here. Definitely the LCL I'm seeing here, but either way, catastrophic, injury in that knee. One thing we do know about players coming back from these knee injuries is that they do have a decrease in general in their production for about a year, basically that whole next season. So I'm not super convinced he comes in and he's just like the guy, number uno, gonna go crazy. Hollywood Brown had a nice connection with Patrick Mahomes last week and caught 2 touchdown passes, right? We have Xavier Worthy there still, who's an explosive player that they're going to get involved. We still have Travis Kelce, who's kind of that security blanket for Patrick Mahomes when he needs to find the guy downfield, a big body, to get a first down just at the marker. We still have the running backs. All three are involved. Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, Brashard Smith. And I think Brashard Smith's a guy that they're going to continue to mix in more, especially every time he comes in the game. It's a screen pass to him. I don't know why teams don't recognize this, but when he gets in the game, he's getting a catch. They're going to pass him the ball, and he's getting some explosive plays off of that as well. So, he's a guy to get excited about as well. So there's a lot of weapons on this team. It's against the Raiders. Maybe they go up big early and they don't necessarily feel the need to put up a whole bunch of points on this team and just beat them up. That's always a possibility as well. I am not as excited about Rashee Rice as everybody else in the DFS community. The only issue is that there's not really good pivots around him at his price point, 5,600. I think the closest pivot for me, which we'll talk about, well, I can just talk about now, is Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton is going to have a bounce back game. He had one catch last week for 17 yards, which is absolutely crazy. Playing against the Giants this week, which is a pretty decent defense, right? They are decent, but you can't pass on them. So I think Courtland Sutton has a nice bounce back here. Quentin Johnston also at 5,900, but those guys are they're not quite pivots because they are $300 more than Rashee Rice. If there's somebody right around Rashee Rice, which, Stephon Diggs is there. Can't really trust him after that last game. I think he is a fine play. I'm not super jumping at the bit to play him. Chris Olave is 200 less, but I just don't, again, I think he's a floor play, not a ceiling play, and that price continue to climb. It is a nice matchup for Chris Olave too against my Bears. So although Turkey Stevenson's really had a redemption arc and really playing a lot better than he did at the start of the season, but there's just not a lot of good options around him. So for me, I think, what I would rather do, and we'll talk about it here a little bit, is I'd rather pay down for one of my wide receivers and then maybe pay up for a CeeDee Lamb and a Justin Jefferson. I think it's possible with what we've got in the slate. We've got a lot of receivers around 4K and under, okay, that are really, really intriguing. Super intriguing. So we'll talk about that in my pivots here. But yeah, I think Rashee Rice, he's fine, but I just think it makes a lot of sense to fade him. I haven't outright fade him yet. I will say that because that price tag is so attractive, playing alongside the hottest QB in football right now. There's a lot going for him, but a big part of me wants to fade him, and I think that's where I'm going to end up. I'm not going to end up with any Rashee Rice because he's going to be. He's going to be like 25 to 30% owned, which is crazy for a guy coming back from, I know, not injury, suspension, but he did get injured. A bad injury. And yeah, you look good in preseason for sure, but preseason is not the season. So, and then I expect Chris Olave to be another guy that's highly owned, and we've already talked about him ad nauseum. But yeah, okay with that. It's a floor play. For the tight ends, I mean, this is like broken record time. There's one new guy here. I expect Trey McBride to be highly owned. 5,700 is his price tag now. Jacoby Brissett obviously has a thing for him, which is great. He had 11 targets, which ties his high for the season. He had 11 targets week 4 as well. 72 yards on those 11 targets. So is the and the touchdown are the attractive things here. If he doesn't score that touchdown, though, it's not that great at 5,700, right? So I'm not going out of my way to get him. I think he's fine. I probably won't end up with him, though. Tyler Warren is another guy that's going to have high ownership. 5,200 is his price tag against Chargers. It's whatever. I think that game. I'm more likely to end up on him because of the game stacks I want to target here, which we'll also talk about. But everyone's going to be stacking that Dallas Commanders game. The second best game to stack, which is the one I would be most interested in, is the Indianapolis and the Chargers. So 59% of the bets are on the under there. and yet it's 48.5 the game total and climbing. So it's going up. So something's definitely indicating that that's going to be a high scoring game. So yeah, I expect those guys to be owned. The other guy I expect to be highly owned, which is a new name, is Michael Mayer. Breitbauer's expected to be, he's doubtful, expected to be out again this week. I expect people to go to Michael Mayer again. He's only 3,500 still. Saw 7 targets, which is awesome. Caught a 22-yard pass, had a touchdown. It's against Chiefs. Obviously, Chiefs are one of the top defenses in the NFL. So I'm not exactly over my heels on Michael Mayer. I feel like he's probably that's probably chasing what happened last week. I probably will not end up with him. But for my pivots, guys I don't think are going to be highly owned, that I think are in good spots, that can win you GPPs. First off, at QB, Justin Fields, going to be under 5% owned. This is a guy that's perpetually going to be a top fantasy option in DFS, strictly solely because of his ability to run the football. And he's got no Garrett Wilson this week. No Garrett Wilson to throw the ball to. That's like his one dude. We can talk about some of the guys. Obviously, Breece Hall already talked about getting some additional passing work. I think Mason Taylor, we'll talk about in a minute as well, is a good weapon for him. But otherwise, his wide receivers, you got Josh Reynolds, you've got Arian Smith, Alan Lazard. I mean, there's nothing here, literally nothing here. This is dog water. But the thing is, Justin Fields can win the game all by himself with his legs. I think he's a fantastic GPP play if he's going to come in under 5% owned. Like I'm going out of my way because I'm running Sims, and the Sims aren't giving me great percentages to win the GPP with Justin Fields as my running back or my QB, because I'm running him naked or with Mason Taylor. And so, there's not a lot of correlation there. But I do think it doesn't matter. He's going to have to play hero ball. So I love Justin Fields here. The other guy I'm looking at as a potential pivot QB is actually Dylan Gabriel. Yeah, I need the weather to clear up there though, to really go there. I do have some lineups with him in there at the moment, but if that weather doesn't clear up, I'm not going to go to him. But they're playing against a terrible Miami defense, and he's only 4.4K. Obviously, he struggled last week, did not have a good week at all. But spending down at QB has been the play by and large so far this season to get an edge on the field, as you saw Jacoby Brissett last week. You saw with Jackson Dart a couple weeks ago. You saw with Carson Wentz, Marcus Mariota. These cheap QBs are, I wouldn't say break the slate, but they are giving you that additional salary you need to go out and build the winning lineup. So that's why I'm looking at a guy like Dylan Gabriel, and other guys that are in that price range I'm not as excited about. Geno Smith has a really hard matchup this week. Cam Ward, I know they have a coaching change now. I just think that they're going to really struggle this season. There's not a lot there for me to like. Jacoby Brissett had a good week last week, but now he gets the Green Bay Packers. I would caution against that. I'm not feeling that necessarily. But Dylan Gabriel has the good matchup here, and he's at 4,400. So he's the guy I would go to as a cost-saving QB. But again, we got to check on that weather and make sure that weather does clear up. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to throw the football. So there'd be no reason to play him. Guy that's going to come in under-owned at running back. The only running back pivot I have on my list here is Jonathan Taylor. And I don't expect him to be like super low owned. He's probably going to be close to double-digit ownership. The reason he's going to be low owned, though, is because his price tag has gotten so, I wouldn't call it absurd, but it's really risen to the point where it's almost absurd, right? It's 8.8K. But this guy just continues to produce, right? 26.7, 31.6, 35.8, 32.5. A couple of duds in there, 14.6 and 12.8. But for the most part, he has absolutely smashed it, getting 30-ish points a week plus. So gets another good matchup here against the Chargers, who have not been a super great defense this season. Definitely in the lower half of the league. It's not like a super, super great matchup, but still a good one. Still a good one. And man, the Colts are just doing a fantastic job getting Jonathan Taylor in spots where he can absolutely smash it. That offensive line is doing a fantastic job. So I do think Jonathan Taylor is a worthwhile guy to get into your lineups to pay up for, as opposed to like a CeeDee Lamb or even a Justin Jefferson. If you can get up to a Jonathan Taylor at 8.8K, I do like it. If you're going to play Caleb Williams, you're going to have to stack him with Rome Odunze. Odunze, not a good week last week, right? 5.2 DK points. Before that, though, pretty solid every single week. Not really, you can kind of set your watch to it. And honestly, he should have had a 20-ish yard touchdown that again was called back for illegal formation last week. If he does get that, he ends up right around the same price, or right around the same DK points he's gotten every single week. Just about. He hasn't had that explosive week again yet since week 2, but he does have that in him. We've seen it. What I don't like is the 6.6K price tag. It kind of is. It's pretty restrictive, honestly. You would have to pay down somewhere else, but it's a good matchup in Saints. So he is a guy that's on the periphery. Not a guy having any lineups just yet, but a guy I might get in if I want to go to a Caleb Williams stack. Quentin Johnston. Talked a little bit about him. Missed last week with an injury. Back this week, he's been the wide receiver 1 up until a couple weeks ago, week 5. We only had 4 targets. Before that, double-digit targets in back-to-back weeks. I'm expecting him to get at least 8 targets here, right? He's going to double his targets, and then the loss against the Commanders. And I think people have forgotten about him because he did have that down week in week 5, and then in week 6, it was about he was injured. So people will have forgotten about him. But this is a good pass funnel defense as well. The Colts are a pass funnel defense. So I expect Herbert to be busy. I expect him to be throwing. I expect Quentin Johnston to be one of his favorite targets for sure. Also interested in Cortland Sutton. I already talked a little about him. Another guy interested, Matthew Golden. Love me some Matthew Golden. This is a guy that's quickly emerging as the team's wide receiver 1. Wasn't on him in season long or best ball, really. I have him a few spots in best ball, I believe. But he is a guy that's starting to be more and more involved in this offense. 5 targets last week, 86 yards, 35-yard catch, 46-yard catch, 34-yard catch. Definitely the deep threat for this team. Christian Watson already ruled out, so no threat there. They've got Romeo Doubs, who you could argue is a wide receiver 1. But I would say it's more Matthew Golden. Matthew Golden's the guy that's getting the best opportunities on the team. Not getting the touchdowns yet, but that could very much change, right? He has no receiving touchdowns on the season, but that could very much change. Absolutely. He's even getting some groundwork as well. 2 rushes last week for 16 yards. I love him. 4,700 is a really, really nice price tag. There's not a lot of people in that price range that are getting the opportunities that Matthew Golden's doing, and that's what you really want to find, right? You don't want to find okay, we're talking about these guys kind of in a vacuum. This guy's good. This guy's not good. These are the reasons this guy's good and not good. But comparatively, compared to around the other options you have at that position in that price range, what does he look like? And yeah, look, you got Keyshawn Boutte. Again, I'm not going there. He had a good week last week. I'm just not going to do it. You have Hollywood Brown. You have Rashid Shaheed. These are the guys that are around Matthew Golden. And, there's a good $300 price jump between him and the next wide receiver, which happens to be Romeo Doubs, funny enough. But he's on an island. There's nobody else in this price range that has this opportunity and this upside. So I love Matthew Golden. Matthew Golden Boy, I'll call him this week because he's my golden boy. Love that guy. I actually have to delete this. I had Luther Burden on here, but we do have news that DJ Moore is. I don't know what the heck happened. He stayed behind at the hospital overnight. They discharged him. Now he's like not even on the injury report. So Luther Burden I was getting excited about. Obviously that can't happen because there is DJ Moore still. So we're gonna erase him. We're not gonna talk about him. But keep your eye on it. Maybe he pops up again, DJ Moore, and if he does, then Luther Burden's definitely in play. But Alec Ayamanor is a guy that you need to be paying attention to. No Calvin Ridley. Already has a solid role in the team. He's not the one I'm most excited about on the Titans. Funny enough to tell you guys. These are all, by the way, this is the start of my value wide receivers. All of these guys, value wide receivers. I am still, don't worry, I haven't forgotten. I'm going to give you my FanDuel player props that I've got out there before the end of the day. But Ayamanor has a solid role. You know, he's gotten upwards of 5, 6, 7, targets every single week. It's been a coaching change, obviously. No Calvin Ridley. This team sucks. That's the thing that like caps the upside of all these guys. So I'm like not going to go out of my way to roster any of these guys. But I do think that there's opportunity here. He's 4.2K. I don't love that price tag just because there's other guys that are cheaper that I like more. Van Jefferson is the other guy on the same team that I'm more excited about at 3.2K. He more so fits into that Calvin Ridley role. Saw 6 targets last week with Calvin Ridley dealing with that injury. Obviously, that happened during that game. Jumped 200 in salary, but still very, very easily manageable, obviously. So if you can get, 10 DK points or even, 9 to 11 DK points out of Van Jefferson at 3.2K and pay up somewhere else, that's the kind of move I want to do at wide receiver rather than go to Rashee Rice. If you're going to fade Rashee Rice, that's what you're going to have to do. Because there's not a lot of guys in that mid-range that I'm over the moon about. Okay. Zay Jones at 3.5K. Actually, you know what? I think we need to take this guy off as well. At the time that I was looking at it, Marvin Harrison Jr. was questionable, but he's been removed. So never mind. No Z Jones. Don't go to Z Jones. But a guy that I have added because of injury news that we need to talk about. Hold your nose, everybody. Hopefully he holds onto the ball this time. But Adonai Mitchell gets his chance at redemption this week. Josh Downs ruled out. No Ashton Doolin. So it's going to have to be A.D. Mitchell. Michael Pittman's going to get his. Alec Pierce is going to get his. A.D. Mitchell is going to get, just like in week 4. 3-4 targets. Hopefully he breaks off a long play. It's kind of a shot in the dark. It's a little bit of a dart throw. But if he does end up getting that big, 40-plus yard reception at 3.4K, you're cooking with gas, man. That's good. You're going to be getting yourself some good value there. So he is a guy I'm considering paying down to. And it is the game I want to target in the Colts and the Chargers. So I'm very interested in A.D. Mitchell. If I do spend down at that wide receiver to fade Rashee Rice, he's the most likely guy I'm going to go with. I mentioned Chris Moore already. I like Chris Moore. No Terry McLaurin. Debo's kind of banged up. I think the last we saw he's questionable, but I do expect him to play. I don't think we have any issues there. But again, if you're expecting he's questionable, but he's probably going to play. If you're expecting this game to be a high scoring game, other people on this Commanders team are going to have to score. And maybe that's Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt. Chris Moore did find the end zone last game, though. Saw 5 targets, 46 yards total, 15.3 on the average yards per catch, which is really nice. But yeah, he had that touchdown. He's a guy, and he's still 3K. He's still minimum pricing, which is pretty nuts. So I do like Chris Moore a whole heck of a lot. The other guy, and no one's talking about him. No, the other guy under 4K that I think is a really solid choice. So there's a lot of solid choices to pay down at wide receiver, guys. I think this is the play. I think this is what we do. We pay down at least one wide receiver. No, just one receiver. You don't have to pay down more than one. just one of these guys we plug in. We hope for 9, 10 DK points. We settle for if it's a 5, 6, 7 DK points, whatever. It's a punt play, it's fine. But Lil Jordan Humphrey, Darius Slayton, currently doubtful. If I remember, yep, doubtful. So probably not going to play again. They've got Wan'Dale Robinson, and they've got basically nobody behind him. Jalen Hyatt's the other guy that has a little bit of a pedigree. Did get a few targets last game, 5 targets. But Lil Jordan Humphrey was a guy that got the early game work, ended up seeing 8 targets for 55 yards. Big guy for Jackson Dart to hit with, right? To a big target for him to not turn the ball over and hit his guy. I like it, man. It's a Denver defense. That's the only problem is they're playing against Denver, which obviously is a great pass defense. But I still can't get enough of Lil Jordan. I think he's a really, really solid play at just $3,100, just $100 over minimum salary. So there's a lot of really good spend down options at wide receiver. I feel like, and they're not going to bust out. They're not going to give you zeros. That's the best thing, right? They're going to give you probably at least 4 DK points, which doesn't sound great. But, if you spend up someone else that ends up getting you 25, 30 DK points, now you're talking about, 35 DK points split among 2 different guys, as opposed to paying for Rashee Rice, who gets you 15 DK points maybe, and then another mid-range guy that gets you maybe 12 DK points. That's 27 DK points, so 35 versus 27. Which one's better there? I think you guys can all do the math for that one. So I think that's the play here. Some tight ends that I'm into that I think are going to be pivots. I do think Tucker Kraft is another guy he's going to be overlooked this week, but he's still in a good spot here. I said he was going to be a pivot last week though, so it makes me a little bit nervous that he's going to be chalk again. But I don't think so. Still a really good, matchup here against Arizona, who's really not really very good against the tight end position. Still waiting for another explosive Tucker Kraft game. Week 2 is when he last exploded, and I think that's possible here. So he is my spend up option. That's a pivot here. Harold Fannin Jr. might end up a little bit more chalky than I like, but he is definitely on the radar as well. Again, we have to monitor that situation. If that weather is bad, I'm not going to go to him at all. But 3,900, no David Njoku. We saw what he can do. He's double-digit points there. So I'm not like over the moon on him. The next guy I am. I love me some Mason Taylor. I think Mason Taylor, on that Jets offense against Carolina with no Garrett Wilson and just an absolutely dreadful wide receiver room. I think it's going to be a lot of Mason Taylor, a lot of Breece Hall, and a lot of Justin Fields. I think all 3 of those guys have got to be on your radar. Absolutely. And then Arondé Gadsden, you saw he was one of the top scoring tight ends last week. And just a guy that's carved himself out a role. And, this is the game I want to target. 3,300 is his salary. It's a really, really nice salary. And he's a guy that I wouldn't mind plugging in there at the tight end. He's going to go, again, probably under 5%, definitely under 5%, maybe even under 3% owned for Gadsden. And he's just a cheap option. So if you want to spend up elsewhere, it's a good place to spend down. Of those options, I think my favorite, though, is Mason Taylor at 3,400, who's only $100 more than Gadsden. I think he's got more opportunity just from the pure fact of they have nobody else to throw to. Okay, game stacks. I already mentioned the game that everyone's going to be stacking, which I'm going to try to avoid to stack, is the Commanders Dallas Cowboys. And I'm not going to completely fade all the pieces there. I like me some Jaden Daniels, like me some Ja'Cory Cross-Kamara, like me some Javonte, like me some CeeDee Lamb for sure. Not going to go Jake Ferguson with that price tag. Don't think it's worth it at all. But there are pieces there that I think you can take without having to go into a game stack. I'm probably not going to go Pickens, of course. That's definitely a contrarian play. I don't think I'm into it, though. So yeah, I think there's definitely pieces here you can grab without stacking it. I'm not going to personally stack this one. The game I do want to stack is that Indianapolis and Chargers game. So, you can definitely stack Pittman and Daniel Jones and bring it back with a Quentin Johnston or a Ladd McConkey if you'd like. You can go with, obviously, Jonathan Taylor and bring it back with Quentin Johnston and Justin Herbert. You can go with a Kamani Vidal if you really want to get froggy here and, bring it back with a Daniel Jones and a Michael Pittman or a A.D. Mitchell. Daniel Jones if you really want to get froggy there as well. Tyler Warren at tight end. Ronnie Gadsden at tight end. There's a lot of really good plays in this game, and it's trending up. I think this is the game that you want to target if you're not going to target that Commanders and Cowboys game. So I do love this game. To stack this game, I'm going to have at least one game stack for this game in my 3-entry lineups. But this brings us to the final here. What is our plays? What are the plays, Keith? What are we going to be playing? And all of your lineups, not all, but over half of my lineups, these are the guys I currently have in over half of my lineups. It's Keyshawn Jenkins. There's no way I'm coming off of him. He's going to be in 100% of my lineups. I don't see any other way that the Browns play this, whether it's good, whether it's bad. Doesn't really matter. This is a fantastic matchup. I'm not going to let Rico Dowdle beat me again. This is the Rico Dowdle this week because Rico Dowdle had Miami and absolutely crushed them. I didn't play him. Running backs against Miami are just going to crush. There's no way I'm not playing Keyshawn Jenkins. I'm not losing to that again. The other guy, Quentin Johnston, my favorite game to stack. The wide receiver 1, ostensibly on the Chargers up until a few weeks ago when that kind of flipped. I expect it to flip back. And a pass funnel defense. Quentin Johnston. And then this is I don't have a lot of core plays, right? I'm going to be doing a lot of spend downs, which you can't I'm not going to load up an A.D. Mitchell on all 4 or 5 of my lineups. If he busts out, that screws me. There's a higher chance of him busting out than somebody else. So I'm not going to be having a lot of, chalky plays or a lot of plays I'm going to be on in every single lineup. But the one guy I just cannot get away from because of the way that he stands out and because of the way his pricing is, my golden boy, Matthew Golden. I said if I take down one of these big GPPs, I'm going to get a jersey from the guy that helps me win it. I'm expecting Golden to come in significantly under 10% owned. If he is the guy that ends up getting a good, 80-yard touchdown catch and winning me a GPP, this Bears fan is going to get a Matthew Golden Green Bay Packers jersey. So you all should be rooting for it, especially you Packers fans out there. But those are the only 3 guys that I have as must plays. I think these are the guys I want to go with. For me, right, if I'm going to fill out the rest of this roster just in real time while you guys are here, tight end, my favorite tight end on the slate has got to be Mason Taylor. QB, let's go with a naked Justin Fields. I love Justin Fields. I want to run that, or it's not naked because we got Mason Taylor. So we're going to go Mason Taylor and Justin Fields. I think those are both safe plays. I definitely want to try to see if I can get Jonathan Taylor in on one of these. Wide receiver, if I want to spend down again, as I was saying, let's go A.D. Mitchell. Let's go A.D. Mitchell and see how that works out for us here. Defensively, we want to go with our cheapest one that's going to not go negative. For me, I think that's probably going to be Miami in that game that's going to have terrible, terrible weather. I do have Keyshawn Jenkins there, but I still think he can go off with Miami still getting, maybe a couple turnovers, and the score is probably still going to be low. We're just hoping, Keyshawn can find the end zone at least once. If he can just hit once, and our defense can still come through for us. That leaves us quite a bit of money left over. So we may not have to spend down at A.D. Mitchell. I like Saquon Barkley. I think he's definitely an overlooked play here. I like Justin Jefferson. Jefferson's the one I talked about most here. So I'm going to go ahead and pop Jefferson in there. And then we can go ahead and adjust from here, pay up. Let's take a look at these defenses. I think the Patriots are in a really nice spot. They're 3,400 against the Titans. So I think that's a really nice spot there. So we don't have to spend down on AD Mitchell with what we have here, since our wide receiver is Quentin Johnston. So let's come up off of AD Mitchell and see what we can afford. Actually, let's go ahead and pop Jefferson in there and keep our flex open and see what we can afford there. Let's see. We can afford a whole lot of nothing that great, honestly. But you get the picture here. We'd have to toy around with this a little bit more. Maybe we come down off of Taylor. Maybe we go to Javonte instead. And then we can come up to, there we go, a Dunze. Look at that. Boom. Popping. So that's the in real time, the lineup that we built here. Justin Fields, Kinshawn Junkins, Javonte Williams, Quentin Johnston, Matthew Golden, Justin Jefferson, Mason Taylor, Roma Dunze, and the Patriots defense. So that's going to do it for me, guys. Good luck to you out there. I really hope that we do better than last week. Sorry about that. But we are going to rebound. It is a week-by-week thing. There's always variance, of course. Hopefully the injuries are in our favor this week and not against us. Hopefully, our chalk doesn't bust out on us. So until next time, guys, I am Keith Cork. Go find me on Twitter at @datadrivenoms. Hit me with a like and a comment. Let me know how I'm doing. Do all that good stuff. We're on YouTube. We're on anywhere you find podcasts, Spotify, Apple, iTunes. Just give us that review. It goes a long way to help people find our podcast here. I want to continue to do good work for you. Oh, speaking of good work, before I go, I got to give you my bets. Also, the NBA season is starting. This is the weekend, and it's starting next week on Tuesday, which is crazy. I probably am going to go pretty light at the beginning, but I'm going to try to get out a show a week with the NBA until NFL is over, and then I'll probably go up to two shows a week for NBA. They aren't going to be as long as this, obviously. There's less research involved. I'm going to be targeting some smaller slates where there's less games as well, so you don't have to worry about 12-game slates and stuff like that. Sorry, guys. I have bad allergies. I think it's because the cat's down here sometimes. So that's why I'm always rubbing my nose on these. But anyways, that's going to be so we're going to be doing some NBA shows. So play bets for you guys. On FanDuel, a couple of bets. Our wonderful partner FanDuel has a couple of really great lines out there for you guys. First of all, Van Jefferson over 22.5 receiving yards. That's minus 114 on FanDuel. I'm doing 1.14 units to win 1 unit. So if $114 win 100, I'll give you $100 units. He had 6 targets last game with no Calvin Ridley. The focus is on Alec Ayamanor. But I think Van Jefferson's the guy that gets the Ridley role. This is a motivated team with a coach that was just fired, and they're likely to be playing from behind in this one. So they're going to be throwing a lot against this Patriots defense. It is a good defense for sure. It's been better. It didn't start out so great, but it's been better. I think Van Jefferson does have a really good chance to go over 22.5. And the other one on FanDuel that I like is Jalen Waddle over 55.5. That's minus 114 on FanDuel. I think it's actually 53.5 receiving yards now, so it's actually shifted against me. I know the weather is bad, but he's nearly topped 100 yards in both games since Tyreek Hill went down. And, if they do throw the ball, he's going to be getting to it. There's going to be spots of good weather here. And there's always a possibility that the weather does clear up in a couple of days by the time the games happen. Browns are a pass funnel defense, though. You want to pass against the Browns. You want to run against them. So he is wide receiver 1 for the Dolphins. And it just shouldn't be this low. I mean, he's probably going to get at least 70 yards, even if the weather is terrible. He gets plenty of yak, so they can get to him underneath, and he can go ahead and run the ball. Waddle's great at doing that. So those are some bets for you guys. Until next time, guys, hey, go get that money.